Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Arma Reforger mod reviews. This time we're going to be focusing more on some of the GM Edition mods. So these are mods that primarily revolve for your Game Master. And so if you're not familiar with Game Master, this is pretty much what I believe in Arma 3 was called Zeus. Some people refer to it as God. Pretty much this is the person that is essentially controlling the state of the environment. You're able to spawn AI, spawn vehicles, spawn objects, change weather patterns, do all types of stuff, and pretty much game masters tend to be the folks that tend to do, like, if you're familiar with D&D, so a lot of game masters will oftentimes put together operations. I myself am a primary game master in our server, and so we're really responsible for putting together operations, running them through, and basically making all the cinematics and everything that goes kind of behind the scenes while your ground troops are going through what they're going through. So today we're just quickly going to go through three different Game Master mods. We have a Game Master FX, the Game Master Enhanced, and then Monster King GM FX. So let's go ahead and jump into our first one. That's going to be the Game Master FX. So before jumping into reviewing these three mods, you might be wondering, how do you access Game Master itself? So the process itself is fairly simple. You have a couple of options. You can either vote yourself if that is available on the server as Game Master. You would have to get majority vote if you're the only one on the server. Usually you can do that right away. Some server configs don't allow for voting and it's disabled. So if that's the case, you would need the password. Obviously, for the password, you don't necessarily need the vote. Or the third option is if you're on PC and the server config has a Steam ID, you don't need a password at all. But all of these methods kind of work the same way. So if you do have the password or you do have your Steam ID in the config, all you would have to do is open the global chat. And so in this case, it's /, and sometimes it's a little weird in this menu. You have to tap it a few times to come up, but we can see the global chat there in the top left corner, and it's going to be hashtag login space, and then it would be whatever your password would be if you were going down the password route. So for me, this is my server, so I have my Steam ID in the admin section, so I just put hashtag login, hit enter, and you can see here on the right side, you have Game Master rights. So once you have Game Master rights, you can go ahead and open Game Master mode, and so here we are in Game Master mode. Alright, so let's jump into Game Master FX as our first mod. To access it, you would open your entity browser. So you can click here, you can hit tab, and then the Game Master FX will actually be found under entity type here by filter. So instead of going through 103 pages, you can scroll on the right hand side here. You can go ahead and activate the filter for Game Master FX, and that's going to pop up with all the different Game Master FX features that we have. So let's go ahead and go through this in order, and we'll just kind of review each a little bit as we go through it. And so we'll start off with our small explosion. So to add any of these, you just can click them either from this menu, or if you have it filtered, it'll pop up on your bottom menu here. And so if you decide you don't want to use it, you can always right click and that will get rid of it. So let's go ahead and start with a small explosion. Pretty neat. Medium explosion. Let's do our large explosion. We'll kind of go a little bit over here because this dissipates. And huge. So yeah, huge explosion, just to keep in mind, unlike the others, will definitely have a longer standing plume of smoke. And yes, these do damage. So we'll put a rifle squad down, put a small explosion. So that takes out one guy, it's pretty close. The medium seems to be fairly unaffected, though his health is a little down. That's large. And huge. Pretty much took all of them out, and it will affect structures, vehicles, and other entities in the world. So let's go ahead and hike it down a little bit down the street here. And so we'll start off with our fires. So we have a small fire that we can set, and now keep in mind with the fires, if it has this infinity symbol on any of the effects, that means it will run until server restart. And if you have save state enabled on your server, if you come back to it, these will still be here. So the only thing you need to be cognizant about the fires is I have had experiences where, depending on whichever version of Arma you are in, um, it has caused crashes. Usually this can be kind of like a memory release, but most of the time these are pretty stable. But if you abuse them, to extreme limits, then any instability can happen. But usually what I do with Game Master, especially with fires, is you do them for effect, and then when you're done with that area, you can just kind of select and delete all of them. So that's our small fire. We're going to scroll down, we'll put a medium, and then we'll put a large. And so yeah, the area effect is much larger, it's also much louder, and yes, it should do damage, if I remember correctly. So you can see his health is dropping rapidly there. And I'm kind of surprised that he didn't run away. I guess he decided to get cooked, so there we go. So we'll go ahead and delete those. And now we'll move over to our smokes. So we have a couple different smokes that you can drop by GM. You can do a white smoke, a green smoke, purple smoke. We'll kind of space this out here. A red smoke, yellow smoke. And so these smokes, you can see a lot of these have descriptions themselves. So these will emit for 90 seconds and auto delete after 120. These are pretty much the same smokes that the enemy or friendlies can pick up and drop. So these are pretty neat, pretty helpful, especially if you're trying to help your guys, get an LZ or something, or if you're just chaotically evil and you want to drop colored smokes, to confuse your own team or create chaos. So again, you can always delete these. It'll make them disappear instantly. That brings us into the other two types of smokes, which you can see by the infinity sign. It's just like the fires. I really like to use these usually for chimneys. So like you can put them at the top of a chimney for the black. And let's just put one here for the white. And so they'll kind of start off slow, like you see. And these again are infinite effects. So these will persist just like the fires. And they can be seen pretty far away, like both the black and white smokes. If you go from a distance, which we will do here, I mean, you can see them pretty far away. So let me hide the overlay here. You see how far these are. So these are pretty neat. Like I said, I really like using them for chimneys. I don't know why, it's kind of like an unnecessary detail, but I like it. But that takes us into our flare parachutes, so we're going to go ahead and switch it to nighttime here because flare parachutes are not really visible. Get away from all these things in the day. So we'll drop a red flare parachute, which will just basically light up this area with red. You can usually see it right here. There's the flare. And it slowly kind of just drops, and then we'll do a white one. So these are pretty useful, especially when you're, simulating that your team has been compromised or the enemy sees them or they're marking the area for strikes and stuff like that. So pretty neat. So we'll go ahead and switch back to day here. And you can see these are still going to persist, but you're not going to be able to see the parachutes in the day. So these are not infinite effects, so you don't need to worry about deleting them. They will delete themselves after some time. And that's going to bring us into the artilleries. So artillery shells, you can drop singles. So as you drop them, it'll take a few seconds and it comes down. So there's various from same as the explosions. We have small, medium, large, etc. So we'll go ahead and go through them. And there's the cluster as well. So same thing as explosion with the addition of the cluster. And then we have things here which is a little bit different. We have the barrage. So what you saw there was a single. Now we can do barrages. So we'll go ahead and start with the first barrage. And one thing about barrages that can happen, or that does happen, it's not that it can happen, it will happen, is you can pre-place these, which we'll do right here. And you'll notice something that they are basically not activating. And so to activate these, you need to right click on them and edit their properties. And so you can do things like change the rounds, fire rate RPM, and the radius. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're just going to do 4 rounds, at a fairly fast RPM and a smaller radius. And so what happens is if you hit activate or disable editing, once you activate it, you can see here the entity cannot be modified. So all that means is once you hit yes here and hit escape and close, it's kicking off. So you'll see those You'll see they'll start to pop up like that, and then they'll just drop. And again, these are pretty much the same exact things as the single ones, so I'll just go ahead and activate these so we can basically see what they look like. Alright, great. And so we'll go ahead and do the huge one here. And if we really want to be ridiculous, we'll just crank this all the way. Maybe keep the radius kind of small. So yeah, this is the infamous, what I call DC Fest. If you drop one of these at like max radius or small radius and just max effect, the smoke out of this will really kill people's FPS, so just be mindful of that. And last but not least, we've got our cluster. And again, to kind of move this along, I'm just going to keep this at 2, do a fast fire, and then we'll just go ahead and hit yes. That is our artillery. So we'll go ahead and move over to the next thing we got here. We've got AP and AT mines. So the AP mine, as you can see here, you can see them, and yes, they do work. And so also the vanilla mine detectors that have been added will detect these now, so you can both use them for the AT and AP mines. And so let's go ahead and show how the AP mine works. So we'll go ahead and walk over it. And as expected, I have now lost my legs. And for the AT mine, let's go ahead and take a truck. And we can either drive it over or... Close. Close, close, close. Hop in the driver here. And as expected, if you drive over an AP mine, you're going to have a pretty bad day. Alright, so that'll take us into some of the more fun effects. So we got different fireworks here. So of course with fireworks, it's always best to do it in the evening. We can give ourselves a little fireworks show after driving over a mine. So we have the option to do a single firework. Really pretty. 10 random. And we can do 30. So yeah, if you really hate your team, you could give them a nice little fireworks show of what's left of them if they drive over a mine. So keep that in mind. I am going to give a volume warning for these next two. The air raid and incoming are pretty popular sounds to use, but they are very loud. So the air raid is one that we use quite frequently. It is absolutely terrifying on the ground, so we'll go ahead and place it in GM. And we'll walk through it again. I'm giving you the volume warning now. So here we go. So just to demonstrate how loud that is, you can see we're pretty far out here, but we can still hear that air raid siren. So it is a pretty cool effect. And of course, if you want to stop it, it will just continue until you delete it. So it does wind down at some point. So if you're going for a smooth transition, it is advisable to kind of wait towards the end of that transition when the air raid is getting quieter to make that more like smooth die down effect. We also have an incoming sound. So again, I'm going to give you an audible warning. Make sure your volume is not turned up too much.
Incoming, incoming, incoming. Incoming, incoming, incoming.
So yeah, both of those are pretty loud. The incoming one, pretty interesting. I do prefer the air raid though. Again, personal preference there. So you do have two sound effects that are included in this. We also have the radar dish, which will spin. These are destructible as well. And so I believe if we use a huge shell, we should be able to take this out pretty easy. There she blows. So yep, the radar dish is destructible and it will just be left like that. We also have a destructible generator. So we'll try a large shell. You can see the generator is pretty much gone. We also have destructible barrels. We'll space these out, and I'll show you why we're going to space these out. So we have destructible barrels and crates. Throw down a Spec Ops dude here. So we'll shoot this barrel first. So the barrels, when they explode, they just kind of deform and get sucked in like that. And then these crates are also destructible, and they do have a pretty huge explosive range. And it doesn't take a lot to set them off, as you can see. The other thing is, if you walk into that cloud, it's kind of like the shrapnel, right? So you will take damage. So these are pretty large area of effect. And to kind of demonstrate that, we'll just go ahead and do this a little too closely. So yeah, the shrapnel got us. So up next we've got non-lethal gas and lethal gas. So to show you how that works, we're going to go ahead and take one of our guys. And so what non-lethal will do is if you get in here, you'll start kind of twitching like this. And you'll notice pretty quickly I'm going to end up passing out. And so this is pretty useful if you're doing a scenario where you're trying to find a good way to transition. Like basically you want to take your guys hostage. So what will happen is they'll stay unconscious this entire time. If you look at their properties, they are actually not bleeding out or anything. They're just knocked out. And so if you delete the gas, or if they're wearing a gas mask, this is key. Gas masks do work. So if they're wearing a gas mask, they will be able to walk through this just fine. And you'll see it will come to eventually. Now, as for the lethal gas, which honestly, if I saw this, I wouldn't want to walk towards it. You can imagine what's going to happen. Yeah, you're going to go night-night permanently. So you don't want to do that. Again, gas masks will work on this, and you can see our guy here is coming too. So the non-lethal gas, as the name implies, will not kill you. So very useful. And that will sum up the Game Master FX. So we'll go ahead and take a quick look at. And yeah, so that's going to sum up Game Master FX. Lots of really cool features added. We'll cover the mod size and quality ratings at the end when we review Game Master Enhanced and Monster King GM FX as well. And we'll kind of go through the details that we usually do at the end of these videos. But yeah, highly recommend this mod. It's a great mod, adds a ton of value, I would believe, for a GM. And so we're going to go ahead and switch over to Game Master Enhanced. Alright, so let's jump into the things that GME adds. So we'll go to our group here, so you have the ability to change formations. You also have the ability to enable damage, visibility, change their skill. So if you've ever worked in Arma tools, you're pretty familiar with the skill. There's rookie, there's regular, there's veteran, there's expert, and there's Cylon. So basically what that implies is Cylon is like the Terminator. They should have superhuman accuracy, superhuman reaction time, and this is the hardest difficulty the game will allow you to do without making custom scripts or other different modifications. So at a fly, you can basically adjust their skill level. So we'll leave these at veteran. You can also change their stance. So like if we put them in a prone stance, they'll go ahead and drop down. Open this back up. And then the loadout editor you see here is not part of GME Enhanced. This is part of Bacon Loadout Editor. And so yeah, there's not a whole lot that you can do with this, but it's still pretty valuable. Honestly, the most valuable thing here would either be for people who just want a quick skill change to their enemy, so changing the difficulty, or the visibility. So the reason visibility is kind of important here is so what I'm going to do is we're just going to wipe these guys out really quickly. And I'm going to grab a US armor bearer, ammo bearer, not armor bearer. And we're going to turn him into visibility now, and that literally will change him to be invisible. And so what will happen now is if we put a bunch of enemies, they will not actually recognize him. And so you're probably thinking, what's the point of this? As you can see, I am completely invisible. I can sit here. So they can hear me, they'll start chatting, they'll get threatened, but they can't see me, right? So they're still like, what's going on? And so why would this be useful? As a game master, if you're basically, want to hear or listen in on your guys as things are happening, or if you want to record things without being visible, this is pretty useful because sometimes you don't want to be seen. As you can see, this guy can hear something. And yes, you can still use your gun. It's going to be invisible. But yeah, as you can see, they'll be aggroed, but they don't know where I'm at, so they won't shoot. It is a little goofy because, right, I can't see the gun. I can't see what I'm doing. You do have access to your typical loadout. So we'll fling a grenade there. And so they'll still react, right? I mean, there's a grenade at his feet. But yeah, you get the point. You're completely invisible to the enemy. So honestly, for this mod, a lot of the features, like I said, have now been implemented. And you'll see if the AI, by the way, if they're invisible, they will see other people. They just can't be seen. So they'll shoot and do all types of weird things. So you got to be, cognizant of that. But yes, all that to say that the invisibility feature is really the only reason I see myself using this mod. I'll get into a different mod in a different episode for AI modifications for a GM that's very useful. That one's going to be pretty lengthy, so we'll cover that at a later point. But yeah, for this one, really, it's just the visibility that I like it for, to be honest, at this point, because a lot of the features have been implemented within the vanilla aspect. So that's it for Game Master Enhanced. We'll go ahead and switch over to our last GM mod for today, and that's going to be the Monster King GM FX. Alright, so for the last mod here, which is our Monster King GM FX, it's the same thing as Game Master FX in the sense that you can filter by it. So same thing, you open your entity browser, you can go down to it, filter by it. I have stopped all of the wind in the game, tried to kill all the ambient sound within Reforger itself so we can focus on this, but MKGM FX essentially is just bringing lots of different sounds to use as your repertoire as a GM. So we're just going to kick it off and just go through these. This is not going to be a whole lot of commentary from my end so that you can hear the quality of these sounds. And so we'll kick it off with the Alarm 1 sound. So as the description there, it's beep beep beep. We'll do the ambient sounds in the jungle now. Do the next one. And the next one. So you can tell these are pretty fairly quiet, but you can also place multiple of these through a forest. I've definitely done that in previous operations. It does amplify the sound then, and honestly the bush sound is really messed up if you want people to kind of turn around. We're coming up on some of my favorites now. So the busy street. Go to the chase running. Crowd angry. Crowd booing. Crowd panic. And remember, you can stack these, so you can see where your imagination can go there. We've got the food market. Footsteps. Haunted mystery. Jet sound. The monkey sounds. We've got our monster breath. Second one. Third one. Fourth. And the descriptions here always kill me. So yeah, 6 monster breaths available to your use. We've got an object dropping. Phone ringing. We got the please help.
Please help me.
Great for a night operation in the woods. A scream for when you stub your toe. We've got spooky sounds. Stairs descending. Evil sounds. Timber tree. We've got a second one. We've got the Wendigos. We've got your zombies. So as you could probably tell, for Monster King GMFX, there's lots of different sounds you can pretty much pick from. I think if you're a horror type of person, or if that's the type of thing you're going for in your server, then in all honesty, with this being like pretty much two-thirds horror-based audio files, then it's kind of a must-have for you. If you're not necessarily into horror, you don't see yourself using a lot of these things. Like for me, we use a lot of the crowds and the ambient effects of the markets and the jungle just to kind of kill some dead space, especially when we're like walking through the woods or going through like an area where we have a lot of civilians. I really do like the market sounds. We don't really make use of the horror sounds, but it really just depends on what floats your boat. And so with that, let's go ahead and jump to the Reforger workshop and do a quick overview of these mods themselves. Alright, so we're here in the Arma Reforger workshop. We are starting with the Game Master FX, which is made by the CEO of Bacon. Honestly, if you're into modding into the Reforger community, or you like to download lots of different mods, Bacon is a huge staple in the community. Very big contributor to pretty much all things that really change this game. So anything by Bacon, it usually is a very, very, very high quality mod. So honestly, it's great to see Bacon making new mods. I'm always in favor of having them within my server. That being said, we've pretty much covered what is on here. He does a good job also of adding a description of everything that we just went through, as well as updating any kind of big changes within the mod itself. And again, if you wanted to kind of see a changelog, most modders will basically put like what they did and the reason for the update within the mod. Some people don't, but Bacon's really good about this. So again, let's go through our criteria. So we've pretty much covered what it consists of and entails. For the quality of this mod, honestly, I'm going to give it 5 stars. All of the effects work great. There's a huge variety of effects that you get within this mod. And honestly, this, like I said, is a must for a Game Master. It may not make more sense for you, especially if you're on the ground or you never do Game Master stuff, but trust me, any Game Master, you pretty much need this, and I would be surprised if you don't run it in your server, especially if you have a GM-focused server. So definitely 5 stars on the quality of the mod. The size is 26.54 megabytes at the time of filming this. Honestly, that's 5 stars in my book. That is a very, very small size for a mod, especially when you consider all the different things that you get with this. So like a huge bang for buck, or in this case, bang for size. I probably could have worded that a little bit better, but that's all right. And for dependencies, there are no dependencies here, so that's a 5 star in my book. The less dependencies, again, the better. So this one is what I would consider a perfect quality mod. So let's go ahead and switch over to Game Master Enhanced. And so Game Master Enhanced we pretty much covered in detail. This is a really small mod, and you can see even the pictures here from the mod. This is like really, really old Arma UI. So some of you might be looking at this and wondering like, what even is this? But yeah, this is like old school Arma UI, and so yeah, it's definitely come a long way. That being said, we've covered what it entails. So same thing as in Bacon. The person who makes this is the GME mod team, or people rather. So the GME mod team is also pretty good about putting details in their mods. So they have their GitHub here. They also, again, put the features that this mod adds. Again, so a lot of these features have already been implemented via vanilla, which is honestly a welcome addition. But that being said, like I said, that invisibility feature, vanilla does not have that, and that to me makes it worth it. So for the quality of the mod, I'm going to give this one honestly 5 stars because of 2 reasons. I know a lot of people are probably going to say, well, you know, vanilla implements a lot of these things. It's kind of useless. Well, I mean, if you go back in the history of this mod, it always worked, it always was stable, and even to this day, it still works and does exactly what it needs to do. Um, the reason I'm saying the quality of mod is high here is it kind of ties into the size of the mod, right? So the size of this mod is only a megabyte or 1.93 megabytes at the time of filming this. So that is pretty much nothing. In 2025 time, something under 2 megabytes is literally nothing. So even if this just gives you invisibility, if you don't use any of the other features, for 2 megabytes, in my opinion, that's worth it. So the last thing is dependencies. There are no dependencies, so that's a 5 star in my book. So this one's pretty straightforward. Like I said, it's pretty short, but it gets to the point. It gets what you need done. So I would consider it a welcome addition into the server. And last, we'll switch to Monster King GMFX here. So this is made by Monster King. Monster King does make quite a few different mods, from vehicles to other things, but again, like I said, a lot of their stuff caters to horror-esque stuff. So again, like I said, if you are big on horror stuff in your server, then a lot of the things that Monster King puts out there is for you. And so just like others, there's a lot of stuff in here that basically are like a pseudo change log, as well as like some of the things that are added in here. The Discord for Monster King is in here as well. Nice, neat little picture here. And so we already went through what it has. For the quality of the mod, I'm going to go ahead and give this one 5 stars. And here's why. So audio files, like, we've all encountered really bad audio files at some point in our life. Like if you're back from like LimeWire and you used to download like a ton of viruses on your computer trying to get a song, or even to this day, I still burn CDs. So yeah, you heard that right. I burn CDs, which means, I pull songs, not going to say that openly, from places and, go through that whole burning process. But that being said, you can encounter some pretty gnarly quality audio, which a lot of you are probably looking at me and thinking I'm like 60 years old, which I'm not. But nonetheless, I'm sure you've heard some bad audio in your life. But that is all to say that the audio that is in this mod is pretty high quality. So it does what it's supposed to do, right? The mod gives you sounds. Those sounds are good quality, and so I give it 5 stars. For the size of the mod, it's 389.90 megabytes, and so this one is tough to rate because it is large, right? Like this is what I would consider starting to get on the larger side. I know a lot of people from A3 and other Armas are probably laughing because, you're used to having like 200 gigabytes of mods, but Reforger does have mod size limits that are pretty low. And these are all things, for example, Xbox users at this time, like their download speeds are horrific thanks to Microsoft, and so you always have to consider, if you run a server or do these things, be nice to your Xbox people. If you run a PC only type of server, then this is not an issue for you, but Xbox people do appreciate if you have less mods because it takes them 50 million years to download anything. So they're capped at, I think, like 2 megabytes per second or something. It's insane. That being said, this is a larger file. However, I am going to give it 5 stars, and here's why. Sound files in general are large, and there's no real way to kind of get around this. Also, I'm not a horror fan myself, but if you're a horror fan, this mod does deliver and cater towards that. So I would imagine someone from that type of sphere who's looking for something like this is delivering what you want. Again, if you're a horror fan and you absolutely hate this, please do let me know in the comments on what you would rate it, right? And so I'm going to give it 5 stars for the version, or the size, which in this case is 389.90 megabytes at the time of recording. For dependencies, we have a Game Master FX, and in all honesty, like, it's not that I'm against the game dependencies, so I'm going to give it 5 stars because this dependency is very small. GMFX, again, is what we covered in the beginning here by Bacon, and I'm going to be honest, if you're the type of person to be running something like this, you're likely going to want something like this too, because again, this is kind of like the foundational Game Master Edition mod. So I'll give it a 5 star for dependencies. So, I think this might be a first, but who knows? We've got 3 mods all rating 5 stars across the board. So that's going to wrap it up for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll have all these links, as always, in the description below, so feel free to click those to find these mods. If you have any questions or you think that these ratings are absurd, drop a reason why in the comments. I'd love to reply and have a discussion over that. So I'll go ahead and catch you guys in the next one.